I don't, as you know, I don't talk a lot. I haven't spent a lot of time talking. I haven't spent any time lecturing, but I don't spend a lot of time talking. But I'm going to spend the first half hour today, and then we're going to bring some students up and talk about something. Some of your classmates. But I want to. It's today's election day in the U.S., so I just feel like I want to touch it, and say a few things, okay? Way to put elections in perspective, and actually, man. Yeah, I want to put some things in perspective. So can you go to, so here's the way to think about this. You know, like I hear people talk about, democracy and is the best system, and I'm not even sure what democracy is. Democracy doesn't exist, by the way. You're just like more or less democratic. It's not something that exists. It's more or less. And when we talk about democracy, what we mean is the greatest amount of decision making in the hands of the greatest amount of people. And so if we were working on it like the extreme level would be that we'd all walk around with these vote counters on us, and we'd be like clickers, and we'd be endlessly voting on things because, you want to distribute power as far and wide among a population of people. So we'd be using these clickers and click on votes all the time, and that makes no sense, right? So then we say, well, how do we get the power to make decisions? Like, right now in the United States, we're still really working through this issue of abortion. It is a major issue, and we're still going to be working on it. We're still trying to figure it out. Like, who gets to decide that? Well, not the majority, right? Because if the majority decided that, we would have abortions pretty widely available for women, because the majority supports that, but that's not the case. And so you feel like, all right, how do we best do it? And how do we work it out? You got, and this quote right here, I love this quote. There are 10 million decisions that have to get made, and so many decision makers who could weigh in on what is the best decision to make. And how do you decide on who those decision makers are going to be? It's a really difficult thing to do. And so just having voting and voting people into power is like, okay, it's one way, but voting doesn't really mean anything if those people aren't really representing the people who they're supposed to represent. If they're not voting on their behalf, just having voting. So people throw around this word democracy, like, oh, we have a democracy. It's like, well, what the hell? What does that mean? I want to go back to that. Like, what does it mean? Because it means nothing if, the rich, like right now, running for Senate in the U.S., in Pennsylvania, is this guy Oz, the Dr. Oz dude. Just rich, right? Because Oprah made him rich. She's responsible for that dude, by the way. And so he just has tons of money, and he's from New Jersey, but he decided to swoop into Pennsylvania, and he's just gonna essentially he's trying to buy his seat in the Senate. And who does he represent? He's just buying his seat. That's what Hillary Clinton did in New York. It's what lots of people do. And increasingly, anybody who's in the Senate is worth a lot of money. And if they're not worth a lot of money, well, they all are. But they're held up and propped up by people who are worth a lot of money. It's like, how is that democracy? How is that the best system of government? What is that? That's absurd. So then you think okay, well, what if it's an authoritarian government? And what if we have a king? And the king makes all the decisions. And the people have no power, and the people don't vote. But what if that king is really wise? What if the king is really smart? Or the queen? The king and the queen, right? And what if the king and the queen are really, really smart? And what if the king and the queen are really astute at picking out advisors who are really thoughtful and really are going to dedicate themselves to making the best possible decisions for all of the people in that society. And by far and away, they could make far better decisions than a bunch of knuckleheads who have lots of money, who are voted into power because people like you all don't know shit about what's going on. You have no idea what the issues are. Because you're too busy doing stuff like memorizing things you don't need for your exams at a university. And so you have no idea. You go in the voting booth, you just pick something. You're like, oh, I'll vote for this guy. You have no idea why, but you just do it. And then the person with the most money usually wins. And then they're going to represent people with the most money. How is that better than a wise king and a queen who are dedicated to ensuring that they make the best possible decisions for the people under their rule? And they spend every day just working to make that happen. And that's not democratic at all. It's an authoritarian king and queen. And yet, I think if I laid those two systems out, the vast majority of us would say, like, I'd rather be under the rule of that wise king and queen. And I could probably make a pretty damn good argument that in most circumstances, it's going to be a much better system and you will be much happier than throwing around this pseudo-intellectual bullshit word like democracy, right? And so, but we do that. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm talking about the sociology of this. And so we're trying to figure out who's going to make the decisions. Like, what's the best way? And so what you do is, we have this thing called voting, and then people vote. And then when they vote, they feel like they have a voice. And then when they feel like they have a voice, they're less likely to be rebelling in the end. So you're going to get your guns out, bro. Get your guns out and go march on the Capitol or whatever. Because you had a vote and you voted. So you feel like you had a voice, when in fact you didn't have a voice at all. We think the absurdity of thinking that you had a voice. But of course you didn't have a voice. This stuff's already taken care of. Just manipulated in some way. But this is what happens. Okay? So you got to figure out how to do it. And I don't know, there's no best way. Because invariably, the king and the queen, who are really awesome, maybe they have a son or a daughter who's a complete idiot and who's power hungry. And then the power goes to the son or the daughter, and then all hell breaks loose and Christ. You know what I mean? So it's like there's no best way. Okay. Go to the next slide. By the way, hang on, go back. Focus in on my face, bro. How's that? All right, listen, man. I'm going to look right in the camera so you can all see me really well. I don't say many things in this class that have any value for anything. Because I'm just a knucklehead who's trying to pull my head out of my rear end. From the moment I wake up in the morning, from the moment I go to sleep at night. But what I just said right there, hold on to that. Hold on to that. Yeah. All right, next thing, man. All right, you can back off now. Unless you like it. But listen, stable. So here's the thing. Systems fall apart at the moment that we transfer decision-making and power from one group to another. So right now in the United States, today is a really dangerous time. Because what happened in the last election in 2020 is this dude Trump and all these lackeys around him have put this poison pill of doubt into the minds of the American people to say voting is rigged and there's election fraud and people are stealing elections. The truth is, I feel like I need to say this. People who study elections and who don't give a damn about Republicans or Democrats, but who study elections are very, very clear that there is very little election fraud in the United States. And the people who study elections as a science, and they've been doing it for decades and decades, are very clear that last election was absolutely, that Biden won the election. Not even a effing question. But now you got this person who's throwing this doubt out there, and these other folks, and some of you who think that this election was stolen because you watched some damn YouTube video put up by some knucklehead, and you never bothered to sit down and talk to the people who've been studying elections in the United States for their entire careers and don't give a damn about who wins or loses. They just study elections. You never talk to them, so you have no idea. You just watch these silly YouTube videos that are put out and designed to sow this incredible doubt. And right now, we are in a very dangerous time because it's when you transition from one group to another. That's when things fall apart. That's when the revolutions happen. That's when things become a huge blow up. And like, whoa, man, we are in such, it's actually really perilous. So, stable systems require a trust in leadership. And you want a stable system. You really want a stable system. You don't want an unstable system. Nobody wants that. You want stability. And it doesn't matter. In this country, by the way, for those of you who are Americans, it doesn't matter if the Republicans are in power or the Democrats are in power because the wealthy are running the show. So who cares? Why are you going to have a revolution when it's the people pulling the strings or the people with the power? Like, who cares? Doesn't matter. So you're going to have some kind of effing revolution when you don't want that. You don't want that. People, trust me, but it's election day, so don't trust me. Whatever, don't listen to me. I don't care. Look, you got to have trust in leadership at some fundamental level, which is like why in here, for example, I try my best to approach these issues from so many different angles, mostly because I'm so confused myself that I don't have opinions about anything because I'm just confused. And so it's really easy to teach about these subject matters because I just teach from a space of confusion. And okay, it's all good. And then you can be confused and then hopefully you'll go figure it out for yourself. But can you go to So, as you know, I just came back last Sunday from Korea, and the night before I left Korea, my last night there was this really tragic event in Itaewon, one of the neighborhoods in Korea, where over 150 people died. And it's just so incredibly tragic. And this is a scene where it's been a week of mourning in Korea. And this is a scene of people who came and left flowers and left notes and came to pray outside in the neighborhood, in the area where the stampede happened and people were trampled and suffocated. And, I'm reminded of how important it is to have governments and have governments that we trust and have governments who can look out for the best interests of the people, including police. Because in the end, even if you think you don't like the police, you will call the police when you need the police. Because in a world in which we live, with so many people and so many complicated relationships, And then situations like this, where you have so many tens of thousands of people all gathering in one spot, you got to have people who can manage the rest of us. It's just the nature of what this is. So if you go to the next slide, these are people protesting because what they're saying is the government and the police didn't do what they were supposed to do. And so they come out to protest with this idea that they can trust the government enough that the government's going to have to respond, and the government will respond. And it's really powerful. It's so powerful. It's so powerful to watch the way Koreans have responded to this just horrible tragedy. And there are tragedies. There's the bridge tragedy that happened, I think 24 hours later in India. I mean, there's so many different tragedies, but it's so powerful. And I think about leadership. And, what these people, what they're asking is for leadership and for accountability. I want to show you a couple things that I think are really interesting. Most people don't think about who they're going to vote for. And most people don't have time to follow the issues, which is understandable. I don't have time. It's my job, and I don't have time to follow all the issues. I probably do more than most people because it's my job. But come on, it's complex. I don't know. What the hell's going on? But as a result of that, people don't change their minds very often. It doesn't matter who is being elected. People don't change their minds very often. There's a small group of people always in the middle who are going to lean this way or lean this way. And that's who the politicians are really fighting over. It's that small group of people in the middle. Most people, they just have whatever it is, their party or something, and they just go for it. Usually it's a party, and that's just the folks that they vote for time after time. Doesn't matter. Which is how some of you may have this idea that, when Barack Obama was elected and he was seen to be this radical liberal, and people who are conservative were kind of like, how could people who are thoughtfully left, how can they support this guy who seems so radical left? In the same time, when George Bush was elected or when Donald Trump was elected and Donald Trump was seen as this this sexist, racist, whatever it was, the different ways that people see Trump. And the people are like, oh my God, I can't believe anybody would vote for that person. Well, people vote along mostly party lines, and it doesn't change time after time. And I want to say this to you because it's really important for those of you in the United States or for those of you analyzing the United States that you understand that things aren't really as crazy as you imagine because most people don't even know and most people don't even care. They just move forward. So look at these maps here. So this is the 2008 presidential election. This is when Obama was first elected. These are the counties, and the counties that went red or blue. Red is Republican and blue is Democrat. So obviously, the blue counties are the ones that have more people in them because basically they get for the presidential election, Democrats and Republicans get about the same number of votes. So obviously then the blues have more people. So go to the next one. So this is 2012, Obama's second election. So go back, go forward. Not much changes. Now, let's go to the next one. This is Donald Trump. Okay, his first election. So go back, and go forward. Okay? It's like, all right, the similar pattern. People aren't really changing very much. They're not voting for Trump. People had no idea who this guy was. It's like, I didn't pay attention. He's just some guy. He's like a used car salesman that makes fun of people. So whatever, they vote for this guy. But that doesn't really, most people wouldn't even know how to spell his damn name. Go to the next slide. And here's Trump's second election. You see? It's like, it's not. People are just following. They're not making decisions. And so as we're thinking about voting and we're thinking about all of these issues, for most people, it's not even important enough to follow it closely, to understand, because it doesn't really matter to them. People are living their lives, and it mostly doesn't matter who's in power. It mostly doesn't matter on most issues, right? So let me show you something else. Go to the next one. Yeah, the vast majority of humans have very few extreme thoughts. Most people, most of the time, are moderate and very moderate. And so as we go through these elections right now in the United States, when there are so y'all listen, man. Hey, can you put your laptop away? Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of really extreme thinking in this country right now, and it's really dangerous. And it's extreme thinking by a few outliers, a small number of people on the far left and on the far right. And they're the outliers. Most people are in the center. And in the center are thoughtful, rational human beings who are willing and able to communicate with one another, including communicate with people who are not like them. And that's true all over the world. All over the world. And don't forget that as we wind our way through this election cycle here, but in truth, also in your own country. Wherever that might be. Brazil just had elections that were like really tumultuous. And most Brazilians are right in the center. It's just not about extremism. So I want to show you a couple things. And I'm doing this because I early in the semester we did a class on the if you remember very early on the dangers of violence. So go to this slide. Next one. So these are guns sold per month. And you'll notice in the United States how the gun sales spike at certain moments. Like here, Obama gets elected here. Gun sales spike, right? Sandy Hook shooting. Trump, right? The election and the coronavirus outbreak. Gun sales spike. And they spike because people start listening to other people. And they start being afraid of what other people are thinking and what other people are doing. And when they start thinking about other people, they lose sight of the fact that most of us are right here in the center. Most of us are reasonable. Most of us are thoughtful. And most of us are very willing to engage people who are not like us. And it's never about those people and those people, because those are the fabrications in our minds. The truth is, all of us are just like us. And us, like every person in this room, I'm certain there are probably a couple extreme thinkers in here, but the rest of us are an us. That we're like, yeah, whatever, yeah, I can sit down, I can do this, I can talk to that person, whatever it is, it doesn't matter to you. And that's how it is for the vast majority of us. And when we forget that, we run the risk of watching things fall apart. And that's what happens increasingly. What I'm seeing with these elections are like, man, people are building a lot of distrust, and it's very dangerous. And I want to show you one. I want to show you two other photos, because these gun sales. We talked about guns a couple classes ago. Caleb sent me go to this next slide, dude. If you're not from the U.S., You see all these gun sales? Dude, we sell guns anywhere. This is a gas station that's got a gun store. It's just like, yeah, you go get gas and you go buy a gun. On sale. Dude, go to the next slide. Here, go to the next slide. Yeah, here it is. Clearance sale now on guns and bows. It's like you go get gas and you go get a gun on clearance. It's like, oh my God, y'all. Like this, seriously, this is not the time for extremism in the United States. When we're buying guns like this is just not the time for extremism. So what I want to tell you is don't build that up, right? Don't build it up. It's like the election's fine. There's not going to be any fraud. There isn't fraud in the United States to speak of. And the degree to which there are tiny amounts of fraud, it's like, yeah, it benefits the Republicans, it benefits the Democrats, a few thousand votes here, couple hundred votes there, this or that, or a dozen, or one person. It is not systematic. It's not happening. And it's so dangerous, man. It is so dangerous. God, you drive me nuts. All right, next slide. Hey, so I think I want to have a conversation about voting. So I invited 6 people from class from 6 different countries. I just want to, so 6 of your fellow students, to have a conversation about what it's like in their lands. About voting, elections and stuff, right? Are we good? Dude, so yeah, why don't you come up, man? Bro. You can. All right, man. So, yeah, she's coming. Doreen's coming. So, hey, can you just say where you're from? I circled all your peeps, man, back there, so people can know. Bro, let's start with you, man. Yeah, you can just turn the mic on.
Hi, my name is Amr Kshob, and I'm from Oman.
From Oman. Yo, y'all see Oman there, by the way? Do we got that? So that's Oman right there. Okay? All right, man.
Hi everyone, I'm Arya and I'm a freshman this year. I'm majoring in computer science and I'm from India.
India.
Hi, I'm Rehan and I'm from Botswana.
Botswana. By the way, if you're African American in here, all those of you who are African American, I just want to point out, Rehan is more African than you are. Just want to let you know that. Are you African American? Are you African American? Yeah. He's more African than you are, man. Just want to point that out. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just a thing. So, bro, from Botswana. So right down. Bro, like, where do you live in Botswana?
I live in a place called Gaborone. It's the capital city.
Yeah? And like, you get out. I've always wanted to go to Botswana, I gotta say, man.
Yeah, it's not much to do there, I can't lie.
Dude, you got lots of awesome animals there, man.
True, but when you live in the city, it's not like
you live in the city.
You're in that environment.
All right. Well, city boy, you got to get out into the world, man. Out into the wild, so to speak. All right, man. Doreen.
Hi, I'm Doreen. I'm from Taiwan, and I'm a freshman majoring in communication.
Taiwan, right there.
Hi, I'm Zichen Tian, and I'm a senior majoring in broadcast journalism, and I'm from China.
Dude, and you're sitting right next to Doreen from Taiwan, man.
Yeah.
Which at this point in time is not part of China.
Well.
Wait, you don't have to respond to that. Yeah, don't feel obligated. Yeah. Wait, hang on. All of China. What? All of China. What he was going to say is like, yeah, it's not part of China now, but it really is part of China, and it will be part of China in the future. But I didn't let him say that, so, right. Got that, Doreen?
So, hi again. My name's Aziz, and I'm from Tunisia, and I'm a major in chemical engineering.
See that little yellow spot right there? That's Tunisia. All right, man. So, bro, let's just start. Let's start with you, man. Oman. Do you guys? So, you have a sultan.
Yeah, Sultan Haytham.
Yeah, who's a new sultan. So tell it. So you heard me what I just said about a really benevolent king and a queen.
Yeah,
So you're the previous sultan, who was
Sultan Qaboos.
how do you pronounce? Wait, hang on. Don't say anything. Anybody know who knows something about? None of the Arabs in here. You can't raise your hand, okay? How many people know something about Oman? Anybody? Nobody? You know, we had, for example, I just want to say this, bro. No one knows anything about your country, man. So this is all you, my friend. Several years ago, there was an organization that was bringing students over to Oman for like a 15-day visit. And a couple of students from this class applied and they got to go. Yo, man, they said it was like the trip of a lifetime for them, man. So your previous
Sultan Qaboos.
How do you say his name?
Qaboos.
Qaboos with a
No,
Q.
Qa. Qaboos.
Qaboos.
Because Qaboos is something different.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I won't even say it. I have no idea what I'm saying. But he was one of those people so he was in power from 1970 to like about 2020, right? He just died?
Yeah, about 2020, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in power for 50 years.
Uh-huh.
And he took power after his father in 1970, and he changed the country to what it is right now.
And how did he change the country? So listen to this, y'all, right? So how did he change the country?
He started building schools, hospitals. Omanis, we had like to rationalize everything before, and our oil became our oil, not like some other countries' oil.
Yeah, like the British and
Like
the
the British,
Americans.
yeah. And yeah, so he changed us. Like before him, we were not as developed, or
Yeah.
we had like nothing going for us
Yeah.
in the country.
Yeah.
And after him, it's a whole new, different country.
And women had then also got the right to vote under him.
Yeah, women got the right to
voting-
vote.
But you guys, like, voting is like,
Yeah, voting is not like a big deal back home, but in different regions of Oman, we have different, like, women are not oppressed in Oman or anything like that.
yeah, women have
Before
very-
and
very
after.
different- because of him. Because he
It's
had
because of the social and the culture back home.
Yeah. And so, but the idea is like, you guys aren't having elections. Okay, listen, man.
Well, before him, also men didn't vote,
Yeah.
so no one voted.
Yeah, nobody voted. Yeah.
Yeah, not
Okay,
the
but
only one.
listen, let me be really clear. Oman, for those of you who have a sense of this, Oman doesn't rank really high when we compare countries around the world on basic indicators of freedom.
Yeah.
Oman does not rank very high.
But in peace, it does.
Yeah.
In stability.
Yeah, totally. No. But freedom is relative, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you those of you who vote, who voted today? Do you feel more free today because you voted? Not really. No, you don't really feel for it. Did it do anything for you? Do you feel like? Not immediately. Okay. So you got this system, right? And I voted today, and it's like, oh, it's all good, right? Well, what's it really mean? So like for you, in Oman, it's like, well, whatever, we're not voting, but like as long as you have a benevolent leader who's making really good decisions, then like, okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't come to voting only at the end. Freedom is not just voting.
Yeah.
You can't criticize like for example, the US, you can criticize anyone, and your vote, I don't know why people in the US are taking like votes like really easily. It's like a privilege that you're taking it for granted.
Yeah.
And you're not voting. However, like right now, your vote wouldn't make any difference in the country, but it's your right to
Yeah,
vote.
it's a right. That's right.
Yeah.
No, it's a right. And so we vote into power in this state, for example. We're going to vote in a new governor. And so once the governor is in, like the governor is going to do what the governor wants to do. And so like, okay, whatever. So I got the right to vote for this person, but like the person's going to do what they want to do. How much does it matter? This is and this is a sociology class, so we're thinking about this. Yeah, I hear that, man. How about in India? Y'all like?
Oh man, don't ask.
You
me.
guys take voting. Have you voted yet?
No. So I guess the age after which you can vote is 18 and
Yeah.
above, or I guess it's 19. I don't remember, but I came here, so
Uh-huh.
I didn't vote there.
So wait, hang on. It's interesting that you said I don't remember. So you're kind of like so many Americans who are just like, yeah, whatever. I don't know. I'm busy. Yeah.
Even before, like, it's a bit off topic, but even before coming here, my friends were like, you are the most typical American kid I could ever see in India. And I'm like, why are you saying that?
Why is that?
I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you have elections in the way when you have elections, people are campaigning like you've seen it here? Do you see it here or not? Maybe you don't see it because you're on campus.
I haven't been here long enough to see that.
Do you have
but
ads on? Are you watching television at all? Or are you?
I've seen plenty amount of commercials on YouTube. So
Yeah,
like
okay.
before watching anything, it's just like I have to see that political leader's face
Yeah.
first, and then only I'm just like, okay.
And are you doing that in India also?
It's more so the same thing, but it's less digital. Like in comparison,
Yeah.
it's less digital, but more like you'll have people outside your neighborhood
Yeah.
with speakers and like announcing stuff and everything, like vote for this person or vote for that person.
Yeah.
And like this person is gonna do this for you if you vote this person and stuff like
And
that.
do your parents, like people believe them ever?
At the end of the day, it's more like you said, that people just follow each other.
Yeah.
And so like even in my neighborhood, it's just like one of my neighbors, when you said that there are there must be a few people here who like have extreme thoughts in regards to this. And
Yeah.
so one of my neighbors, when I used to live there, he had very extreme ideas. And so like everybody, I watched not only my parents and everybody, other neighbors, like kind of follow whatever he said.
Okay, I got you.
And I was the one, I was like, no, Dad, you don't need to do this. It's
Yeah.
you know what's the right thing to do.
Okay.
And so that's how it works.
Okay. But but mostly people are not thinking deeply about these issues.
Okay.
From what you can see, just listen, you're only 18, so you don't know. But from what you saw as an 18-year-old living there.
Yeah. Actually, I just never liked the conversation that whenever anybody had such conversations. But I was just like, yeah, people do have ideas and everything.
okay.
But like, again, they do follow what others
Okay.
are saying.
Yeah, all right. Bro, what's it like in Botswana, man? Or is your family, so you're a citizen of Botswana?
Yeah, so like my family's originally from India, like
Yeah.
that's my ethnicity, but my dad and I, like that's the generation that started. Everyone's born and raised in Botswana. I mean, voting isn't a big deal like it is here, but it is still a big deal. The one thing I noticed is like, especially comparing to South Africa because it's so close, like no one publicizes their opinion. Like it's a lot more taboo to like talk about it. Because I remember even in my household, like my dad would never tell us until we were like 14, 15, like, oh yeah, no, this is the party I vote for and all of that.
Uh-huh.
It is kind of just like doesn't need to be publicized. And
Uh-huh.
like campaigning isn't so much in your face like it is over here.
Uh-huh. Or like it is, like in India, campaigning is also
Yeah.
kind of in your face, yeah. Not in Oman, because it's like it's irrelevant. Yeah, so it's kind of done, everything's done on the down low.
Yeah, like the most you'll see is like there'll be like campaigning talks and stuff, but the number one thing is like on lampposts when you're like driving, everyone
Yeah.
will put like a picture of like, oh, vote for this person, and it'll
Yeah,
just be
yeah,
like
yeah.
everywhere, and that's
Yeah.
like the extent of it.
Yeah. Do you know how many parties there are?
Yeah, so like right now, there's about 3 or 4, maybe 5, but there's it's kind of like the US. There's like two that stand out, but it's a one-party country really. So it's one party that's ruled since we got independence from the
Yeah.
British.
Yeah.
But there's like an upcoming party that's got like good ideas, and they're like getting a group of people excited. But at the same time, it's probably not going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, that's the nature of it. Yeah. All right, man. Doreen, Taiwan. Well, you're 18 too, right?
Yeah, 19.
19?
Uh-huh.
What's it like in Taiwan?
So you have to be 20 in order to vote in the election, and then you only have to be 18 in order to vote for the public issues.
Wait, hang on. What do you mean by that? Say
It's
that again.
like, do you want the nuclear power plant to continue working or not, or like environmental issues?
So social and economic the number of issues that are out there.
Yeah,
You got to be 18 to vote on those. But to actually vote for
the election is 20.
election, like politicians, you got to be 20.
Yeah.
Whoa, seriously? So does that mean then when you were there, you voted on? Did you vote ever?
No, because like I just have to be like 1 or 2 months older in order to vote.
Okay, I got
Yeah.
you. No, but I mean for social issues and stuff. Did you have a chance to do that
No.
or not? Okay, I got you. All right. And then how do you guys do you consider yourselves to be a democracy?
Yeah. I mean, Taiwan actually moved from flawed democracy to full democracy 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and then it's like I think it's ranked like 8th in the whole world. Like it's full
Yeah.
democracy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean being pretty democratic. So voting's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the voting rate is increasing recently.
Yeah, more and more people.
Yeah.
Got you. All right. Bro, China.
Well, what I'm gonna say about like we have like our 5 years elections. When, like,
Wait, hang on. Y'all, listen, man, let me tell you something. Tien right here is going to tell you all about China. And you want to listen because China is going to be running the world in another 30 or 40 years. And so, and you might want to consider like taking a Chinese class so you can maybe learn how to say welcome to McDonald's. Can I take your order or something like that? McDonald's won't be here. Yeah. Because, you know, once they kind of take over everything, because dude, they'll take over Chipotle also. Listen, man, you know, we're so busy. Here's the deal. Y'all ready? I'm just want to say this, and I'm going to let you talk.
Okay.
All right.
So like every 5 years, such as like this year and the previous 5 years, we're gonna like summarize what happened in China in the recent 5 years, and we're gonna like to make a plan for like the next 5 years. And with a few days, and we're gonna make the elections for the president and all other positions here.
But you guys, but you don't vote for the president at all, and at those levels.
You might
right?
research that like people like the 18-year citizens have the right to vote for Chinese citizens, but like actually most of us just don't vote and don't care about it.
Okay, but you only vote like okay. So Xi Jinping just got he just re-upped his time like a couple weeks ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
For another 5 years, which okay, and I'll withhold my thoughts on that. But so he re-upped the game. So he's got his third 5-year term.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He's voted on by like 2,950 people or something, right? But like you would never vote for him. You can only vote for the local level people, right? Am I
Yep.
right on that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how is that? Like, how are those elections for local level? So you understand, like for the equivalent of the Chinese president, the people don't vote for that person. The people that vote for that person are people in the upper levels of the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, okay? So they are making that decision. And presumably, by the way, can I just say this? Presumably, they're making the decision on the basis of like all sorts of interpersonal meanderings and wranglings and so on, but also maybe they're like making the decision on the basis of who's going to be the best person. I don't know. Well, that's not what happened in this case. But in local elections, have you ever voted in local elections?
Nope.
How come? Were you able to, or are you here in the U.S. and so?
Well, I don't know, what I'm gonna say, like the mayors here, like I don't know a lot about it, but I just heard about like some people just gonna vote it, but it doesn't relate to like the people around me or like the friends a lot.
So they're just the people who are going to be in power, just going to be in power.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you vote. Hang on, I'll say it for you, man. So you vote, but you got the person you're going to vote for. You put the check next to their name, but you know they're going to win. So it's like, okay, got it. You kind of know it at the local level. So do you feel like, I'm going to ask you this question that I asked Amir. Do you feel like somehow you miss out on something because you can't vote for your supreme leader? I mean, I'm saying it like let's say your leader, right? Your president.
yeah, I
Are
mean,
you missing out on something?
I would just say like the no comment because like probably like people know who is gonna be the leaders, but like just all the citizens just care about like how they just live, and well, there's some like kind of the stuff or the citizen might know or might don't know, but I think like the citizens, like the people just feel like they just great living in China. That's gonna be fine.
So you're just living. You wake up every day.
Yep.
You brush your teeth.
Yep.
You take a dump.
Yep.
You wipe, unless you have one of those awesome Korean toilets. You wipe your ass, the whole thing, and you do what you got to do, and you have your the Korean toilets, dude. You gonna get one of those? Oh, you got one? Of course you do. Yeah. All right. So then you have your breakfast. You do what you got to do, and like, all right, whatever. And so I want to know for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you sit around? Do people in China sit around thinking, "Oh, I wish we were like the Americans, that we got to vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump or somebody?"
Well, we're just curious about like, and just make a lot of comments in the internet. That's about like the American election, about like who's gonna be winning, Trump or Biden. We're just curious about that,
But you don't really care for yourselves. It doesn't matter.
yeah. Well, like the Democrat and Republican. Well, it's just gonna be like who is gonna be better benefit for international student, I think.
Got you. Okay, I got you. Right. I got that. And so one final thing though. Oh, well, hang on. Let's just go. Bro, in Tunisia, man, how you guys rocking it there, this voting thing? Have you voted in Tunisia?
Yeah. So you vote kind of like every 4 years, kind of like here, and you also vote for. We have House representatives that kind of makes a lot of the decisions in the country, and every 2 years we vote for those too.
Kind of. Okay, so like the U.S.
Yeah, but don't quote me on that because I'm not very sure.
All right, okay, I got ya.
Like most people here, I'm not very self-aware about the politics of my country.
Okay.
So, so there's that. But in 2011, we shifted from a authoritarian dictatorship
Yep.
to a more, let's say, to a more democratic system where.
Dude, listen, his country kicked off the Arab Spring. If you know anything about the Arab Spring, that was like those are his people. By the way, but go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, in 2011, there's a guy that was robbed by police, and as a protest, he burned himself publicly, which sparked social media riot, which sparked a media riot, which sparked actual riots, and we kicked off dictatorship in my country, and apparently that caused a lot of commotion in other Arab countries such as Libya, Egypt.
Dude, you basically turn the world on its head. Yo, can I just say something here really fast? If you have the idea that, at World in Conversation, our moniker at World in Conversation is a tiny act can have profound effects. So here was this man who had a push cart selling fruits and vegetables, I think, right? And he had his push card, and you have to, because it's a very corrupt system, because most systems are corrupt at some level, he had to pay bribes to the police, right? And he didn't want to pay the bribe. They came in to shake him down, and he just was like, no. And so they took his cart from him and confiscated it, and he wasn't going to get it back unless he paid the bribe, okay? So this is in the capital city in Tunisia. And so he then, as he went down to the police station to get it, they weren't going to give it back. He went to the square, right outside the police station, right? Or at Central Square?
No, outside the police department in city beside.
And he poured gasoline on himself.
He poured gasoline on top of his head, and there were people filming him afterwards, right after that, and all he said was, "Give me back my money or I will burn myself," and nobody responds, so he just burned himself, and there's a video of that. So.
Dude, that act right there changed the entire Middle East. And in many ways changed place all over the world, had an impact with this one guy. So I'm not saying that that's a good idea to go out and pour gasoline on yourself, but it is a good idea to remember that a tiny act can have profound effects, like really profound effects. So do you guys take voting? Do you have, when you do elections? Because this is a very new system, man.
I mean, okay, before 2011, we had elections.
Yeah, with one winner.
Yeah, with one participant, and
Yeah.
the rest just was there to with the illusion that, we had freedom, but not really. But what's funny is that today, for most of the conversation, my dad talks about politics a lot with other people, and when I'm there, I kind of listen. For most of the conversations, it's not right versus left. It's more like dictatorship versus dictatorship. If you want a dictatorship, or you want democracy. Because apparently since 2011, economically, we didn't fare better than before dictatorship. So people are just bring it back.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is the question, right? This is dude, bro, if you go to Oman, for example, would you trust your fellow countrymen and countrywomen to make decisions, or would you trust your sultan? I mean, who would you trust more? I mean, you have to
Decisions
say
about
sultan
what?
because you're on camera, but
Yeah, but
no, it's just
decisions-
to make the best decisions for the country.
I would trust the people.
The people?
Yeah,
Yeah, you trust them,
yeah.
but you're sultan. So compared to
But
the
I
sultan,
trust them too, but
you also trust the people.
I would trust the people more.
Yeah? All right. That's cool. That's fair. Bro, by the way, if we could go back to China for a second.
Mhm.
Hang on, actually. Who's got a question? Who wants to ask a question? I think. Who wants to ask a question? Someone's got to have a question, Mo. Dude, do you have a question? You have nothing? I have so many questions. I feel like I don't want to be the only one asking questions. I have so many questions. Bro.
So earlier, whenever you were talking about the hypothetical situation of the perfect king and queen,
The benevolent, smart
yeah.
king and queen.
how would we judge them? What would be the metric that we would go by for this benevolence?
I think when you meet someone who's wise and smart and benevolent, you know it, right? You know it. So if you go to the previous sultan, look, there are problems, right? I mean, I know Oman, so there were problems, but man, dude, but you know it, right?
How would other people know it though? I'm thinking especially as a study kind of thing,
I think
scientifically there's metrics,
Yeah.
So how would you And how do you know that they're not actually still having some kind of other motive for themselves?
You know,
There's,
you don't.
There's
really.
that whole argument of, is morality, you know,
Yeah.
for the greater good or just for other people to feel good about themselves?
The point is, you don't know, really, in the end, you don't know. But my purpose in raising this conversation is the inanity. When I listen to, especially anybody at all, but especially Americans, in their like, just inane, oh God, it's like I have to swear, and I don't want to swear. But the inanity that I hear about the democratic system, and it's the best system, and then, meanwhile, you were so busy with these bullshit, like political ads, and getting lost in this and lost in that, and like trying to, I don't know, all the stuff that we get lost in. Meanwhile, Tien right here, who's never voted for his leader, never will vote for his leader, right? Meanwhile, the entire Chinese system is set up in a way that they're just moving forward in like there's no tomorrow. And we're busy arguing with each other about whether there's voter fraud when like 10 votes there was some fraudulent bullshit with 10 votes out of 10 million. Meanwhile, the Chinese are just blowing forward, not voting, not caring, doesn't matter to him or any other Chinese student in here. It's completely irrelevant. And on the basis of this, just end up taking over the world. Meanwhile, we're going to be back here with our heads up our asses trying to decide like, oh man, but you know, is voter fraud or whatever it is, the stupid stuff that we're worried about. Meanwhile, it's the century of China, y'all. Like, learn how to say, welcome to McDonald's, can I take your order? Because that's where we're going. Like, it's insane, right? So, like, whatever. I'm not saying that's a good thing, bro, by the way, right? Because I'm not supporting much of what your government is doing, especially regarding your country, too. But, all right, man. Dude, do you have He's giving you looks. This guy? Wait, do you have a comment?
He wants to say something.
Wait, can I ask Doreen, by the way? So how about...
Let's go. Come on.
No. How do you think? How do y'all think about China? By the way, it's your opportunity.
In what way?
Nah, just like this guy right here, man. Can you be friends with this guy? Dude, you have, man. Can I just say something to the class? Dude, can I just say something to the class? We're having fun up here. The three of us right now, and the other Taiwanese students. Dudes, Taiwan is a country that is right now an autonomous country. His government says you're not an autonomous country. Chiang Kai-shek, who is being chased out of China by Mao Zedong, and went over the channel into Taiwan, and decided to establish like the new. It was a land called Formosa. It's a long story, right? But his country says you're not an independent country. You are part of China, and his country is threatening to invade her country, to say like, no, we're going to invade and we're going to bring you back under Chinese rule. And it's pretty serious actually, because if his country does that, which he doesn't support, because he's smart enough to know that if they do that, it's going to be all hell's going to break loose in the world. And she doesn't want that because she's going to be the victim of that invasion. And it's going to be horrible. It's going to be horrible for all of us. And it's really, really, really dangerous. And so while I'm making kind of a joke here, it's actually not a joke, because if his leadership does what they're threatening to do, we're fucked, right? Really. So, do you have anything you want to say about that? Like, are you guys really afraid? Are you afraid of the invasion, or are you just living like the South Koreans are living, assuming that?
I mean, probably a little bit.
I think it's more intense when Speaker Pelosi visited Taiwan, and then at that time, because like China have a lot of like military plane fly over the sea.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure about now because like I'm in the States for a while, so, like
Yeah,
for
yeah,
several months. But like I think definitely Taiwanese people are a little bit afraid of like the if China actually invade.
Yeah. So you didn't support when she did that. I didn't support when she did that. She was an idiot to do that. Bro, do you have any thoughts on that? Can you see her position? Do you
Yeah.
see the position of time? Yo, hang on, listen up. I have 2 minutes left. I want to hear what he has to say. Yo, hang on. Bro.
Well, what I'm gonna say is about like after like the Pelosi visited Taiwan, like all the internet, like all the internet on China are very angry for that because it's kind of like to disrupt about the Chinese things, and even like the president, she just said like we are not guaranteed using like the military to invade Taiwan for this one. But what I'm gonna say like for about like the Chinese standards, yeah, like everybody know that what like the Chinese all the I'm gonna say, but like for me, the comments, I mean, like we just, like the war system is here, like we gotta like to keep peace for that. If
Yeah.
like there is we really just to invade it or like to get the war, but well, like
No, it's
that's
very
gonna be,
dangerous, man.
yeah,
But Chinese people don't want war.
I don't know.
No, but do you want war, bro?
No,
No, dude, most Chinese people don't want war.
yeah,
Most Tunisians don't want war. From Botswana, Taiwan, India, Oman, no one wants war. It's just what happens at another level. Hey, listen, let me just say the following. I got 20 seconds left. First off, thanks, dudes. Thanks, man.